hardly evolved since the First World War. Responding to the pace of events, the government began to rebuild the armed forces, including the RAF. So, Fighter Command became its first commander-in-chief. Over the next 3 years, Air Chief Marshal Sir Hugh Dowding would oversee the transformation of this force into the front line of our defense against the Nazi onslaught. This is his story. From the moment Dowding sat behind his desk in this very room, he knew his task would be a difficult one. Germany's rapidly developing Luftwaffe wasn't his only adversary. He faced many more, on the home front. Politicians and figures in the Air Ministry believed that only by having large numbers of long-range bombers could the threat of air attack be avoided. Dowding and others saw things differently.
Can you go slower, please, sir?
Controlled intersection. New technology that could detect approaching aircraft. Dowding and his team combined it with the work of the Observer Corps and huge advances in radio and telephone communications. But all this information had to be collated, displayed, and communicated to provide a clear air picture in a matter of minutes. All controlled just along the corridor in an experimental filter room and an operations room here at Bentley Priory. Dowding also saw things from a pilot's perspective and cared passionately for his fighter boys. He worked tirelessly to push for enhancements to aircraft design, to improve speed and ground-to-air communication, as well as something very close to his heart: pilot safety.
If Chicago gangsters can have bulletproof windows for their cars, why can't my pilots have bulletproof windscreens?
The entire system was put through extensive trials as the threat of war grew, making control of the skies crucial to survival.
Towards increasing interception to 100%, which is our goal.
All the elements of Dowding's system gradually came together, and not a moment too soon.
I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
When the Nazis launched their assault across the Low Countries and into France in May 1940, Dowding's precious fighter squadrons were deployed across the Channel.
The government has opened a tap through which will run my total hurricane output. My resources are slipping away like sand in an hourglass.
But there came a point when Dowding had to resist further weakening of British defence. His thoughts were made clear in a famously frank letter which found its way to the new Prime Minister, Winston Churchill.
If the Home Defence Force is drained away in desperate attempts to remedy the situation in France, defeat in France will involve the final, complete, and irredeemable defeat of this country.
Fortunately, Dowding's clear-headed argument won the day, and when France did fall, Churchill summed up the mood.
When General Guénon had called the Battle of France is over, the Battle of Britain is about to begin.
Britain was, indeed, Hitler's next target for invasion. The inevitable, for which Dowding had planned for over 3 years, was fast approaching. The question was, would his system hold? In July 1940, attacks started on shipping in the Channel before the German assault intensified. Then, in August, Hitler launched his all-out attack aimed at destroying Britain's airfields, which would leave our skies defenseless. As reports of the daily German assaults reached the Prime Minister, Churchill drove here to Fighter Command headquarters to assess the state of affairs for himself. He watched Dowding's sophisticated operation in action as radar stations along the coast picked up the vast numbers of approaching intruders crossing the channel in the North Sea. And he saw the staff plotting and controlling the course of the raging air battles. For both sides, the human cost was high, but for Dowding, the feeling was more personal.
People talk very lightly about casualties. They'll say, we only lost 4 pilots today. I feel as if I have lost 4 sons.
Despite the intensity of the German raids throughout August and early September, Dowding's system continued to hold. The air battle reached a climax on September the 15th with a great success for the RAF. This was the day when the Luftwaffe's morale was broken. Churchill later wrote, "The odds were great, our margins small, the stakes infinite." By the end of October, the RAF had won the Battle of Britain, and with British air superiority assured, Hitler abandoned his invasion plans. But the Blitz continued. Exhausted and already past retirement age, Dowding reluctantly stepped down, leaving Fighter Command with a final letter of farewell to all his airmen, or his chicks, as Churchill affectionately called them.
In sending you this, my last message, I wish I could say all that is in my heart. I cannot hope to surpass the simple eloquence of the Prime Minister's words. Never before has so much been owed by so many to so few.
Goodbye, sir.
Good morning.
The Battle of Britain would prove to be one of the key turning points in the war. By saving these islands, Dowding and the RAF paved the way for liberation and eventually peace across the free world. This freedom that we now take for granted has its roots here in this building and in this very room. Although it would take another 4.5 years to finally secure victory, thanks to Dowding and his courageous aircrew, the men and women of Fighter Command, and all the support services, Britain's darkest hour also became its finest hour.